Try pressing the tip of your tongue against the ridge just behind your top teeth.
Right, just right there at the front.
Yeah, exactly. And now, just let the air flow smoothly around the sides of your tongue.
It's a very specific feeling.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that specific physical motion, forming the letter L, is secretly one of the most powerful psychological tools in the English language.
Oh, absolutely. It's wildly overlooked.
Because, if you think about it, everyday conversations often default to this kind of protective camouflage.
Yeah.
We use these beige utilitarian words just because they're safe.
Right. Safe and completely forgettable.
Exactly. You ask how a massive project is going and someone just says, fine. We recycle the same 30 words all day long, and it leaves you feeling like you're just reading off a sterile corporate script.
Which is exhausting, to be honest. But it is entirely possible to shift the atmospheric pressure of a conversation. You just have to swap out a few of those rigid words for something a bit more, well, deliberate and playful.
Because the words we use actually dictate the limits of our reality. I mean, if you only use beige words, you are trapped in a beige world.
100%.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Right.
Because we are stepping into what our source material today brilliantly calls a lexical lounge.
I love that phrase so much.
Me too.
Yeah.
We are doing a deep dive into a really charming linguistic guide titled 29 ludic L words to liven up your vocabulary.
It's such a great text.
It is. And the mission of our deep dive today is to explore this mental space, this lounge, where we can trade in our automated everyday vocabulary for words that feel, a bit more literary, but they still retain this really compelling lived-in charm.
Right. They don't sound pretentious.
Exactly. But I have to ask, why the letter L? I mean, out of the entire alphabet, what gives this specific letter the unique power to bypass our standard conversational filters and actually make listeners lean in?
What's fascinating here is the fundamental phonetic science of how the letter L actually operates in the human mouth. Linguists classify the L sound as a liquid consonant.
A liquid consonant. That already sounds cool.
Right. So think about a harsh K sound or a hard T or a P. Those are what we call plosives.
Plosives, meaning they, explode.
Exactly. They literally stop the airflow in your mouth and then release it in a sudden percussive burst. They create these micro moments of tension.
Oh, wow. I never really noticed that, but yeah, it's literally stopping the air.
But the L sound, on the other hand, doesn't stop the air at all. It flows continuously. And because of that physical, frictionless glide, words dominated by this letter inherently lend a sense of buoyancy. They give this literal lift to our sentences.
So it actually feels different to the listener?
Yes. It physically calms the auditory processing of the person listening to you.
So you are quite literally giving your language aerodynamic lift. That is wild.
It really is. It's not just a stylistic choice, It's an actual phonetic mechanism.
It's fascinating how our brains naturally map that physical sensation of, frictionless flow onto abstract concepts, especially when we talk about physical grace and movement.
Oh, definitely. The source dives right into this.
Yeah, it highlights this by introducing words like lissom, limber, and light-footed. Now, I think we all know what it means to be limber.
Like stretching before a morning run.
Right. But the source zooms in on the word lithe, and it uses this highly specific imagery. It describes a cat's lithe body slipping through a narrow gap between fence posts with just, absolute calm precision.
And that image of the cat is vital. It illustrates the core mechanic of these words, which is economy of effort.
Economy of effort. I like that.
Yeah, because the cat isn't just moving. It is moving without a single ounce of wasted energy.
Yeah.
There is no friction, no hesitation.
No collateral damage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is what live actually communicates.
Well, let me play devil's advocate here for a second, though.
Go for it.
Because if I'm prepping for, say, a high-stakes corporate strategy meeting, how can I realistically use a word like lissom or lithe without sounding like a ballet instructor critiquing a pirouette? I mean, it feels almost too delicate for a boardroom, doesn't it?
I get that. It does feel delicate, but only until you realize it's actually a surgical tool for problem solving.
A surgical tool? How so?
Well, the goal isn't to sound theatrical. The goal is to be hyper-precise. You take the physical grace of that cat slipping through the fence, and you apply it to navigating bureaucratic red tape.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Right. So instead of using a tired phrase like, our team is really good at pivoting, you say, we need a more lithe approach to this bottleneck.
Oh, wow. That hits totally differently.
It does. Or you describe a financial strategy as lissom. because it has the structural integrity to bend to market changes without snapping. You are taking that physical lightness and using it to give your professional language a sense of smooth, frictionless momentum.
So by calling a strategy lithe, you aren't just saying it's adaptable. You are secretly implanting this subconscious image of zero wasted energy into your colleagues' minds.
Exactly. It's a linguistic sleight of hand.
That is brilliant. And what's incredibly cool is how this frictionless gliding movement doesn't just apply to physical bodies or, corporate strategy. Language uses that exact same phonetic structure to describe how light behaves.
Precisely. We move from the grace of physical movement directly to the behavior of radiance itself.
Right, because the source brings up visual words.
It does. It highlights words like lucent, which means glowing with light, sort of like a morning sky just turning a soft blue.
And luminous is in there too, right?
Yeah, luminous, radiating brightness or energy. The text compares it to someone's eyes lighting up when they open a long-awaited letter.
Oh, I love that image.
These are words where the L sound perfectly mimics the unimpeded travel of a light beam.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because the source then introduces the word limpid.
Limpid. A fantastic word.
It defines it as clear and bright, but the imagery they attach to it is incredibly specific. They describe a mountain stream that is so perfectly clear you can see every single smooth stone resting on the riverbed.
It's a gorgeous visual.
It really is. But to pull this back to the practical application we just talked about with live and the corporate boardroom, could I look at a really complex data set or a convoluted email from my boss and call it limpid?
You absolutely should. I mean, that is the exact power of the lexical lounge.
Really? It doesn't sound too poetic for an office.
Not at all. Think about the corporate jargon we are constantly bombarded with. Words like synergy, bandwidth, or paradigm shift.
Ugh, the worst.
They are opaque words. They create murky water. So when you tell a client that you are presenting a limpid proposal, you are utilizing the visual imagery of those riverbed stones to communicate absolute clarity of thought.
Wow. So I'm basically telling them the water is clear.
Exactly. A limpid argument signals that your logic is so perfectly transparent, the audience can look right through your words and see the undeniable fundamental facts resting at the bottom.
That is so powerful. So by choosing the word limpid, you're essentially forcing your audience to visualize looking straight through your presentation to the raw data.
It's a brilliant cognitive trick. It completely strips away the noise.
Okay, so if limpid helps people see your ideas more clearly, how do we use this phonetic toolkit to change the way people actually hear us?
Well, this is where the liquid consonant really starts to manipulate the social dynamics of a room.
Okay, I'm listening.
The source introduces these really rich auditory words, like lilting, which gives this cheerful, rhythmic quality to speech. It makes ordinary words sound musical and warm.
I feel like a lilting voice just makes you want to keep listening to someone.
Definitely. And then there's lyrical, which takes an ordinary scene and turns it into a vivid, expressive description.
And then there is lucid, which is all about clear, lively expression. I think the source notes that a lucid explanation makes a dense, complicated topic instantly digestible.
Yes, lucid is the ultimate goal when you are explaining something difficult.
But right after lucid, we hit this fascinating outlier in the text, the word loquacious.
Ah, yes, the outlier.
What's wild is that the source actually does not provide a formal dictionary definition for loquacious, unlike almost all the other words on the list.
Right, it just drops it into a sentence.
Yeah, it only gives us the sentence context, which reads, let me check. The loquacious host filled every pause in the conversation with lively stories and quick remarks.
It's a very specific vibe.
It is. And I have to ask, is loquacious actually a compliment here? Because, someone who systematically fills every single pause sounds like they could be incredibly exhausting to be around.
That is a very fair point.
Uh-huh.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture of human interaction, the lack of a strict definition in the source is actually quite telling.
Really? How so?
It highlights the duality of how we wield language. See, being lucid is the intellectual goal when you are transferring complex data to a colleague. You want that limpid, transparent clarity.
Yeah, right. You want them to get the facts.
But human communication isn't just a data transfer. Being loquacious, taking on the labor of filling those heavy, awkward pauses, that changes the emotional temperature of the room.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, a loquacious person might be exactly what a dying, uncomfortable dinner party needs to jumpstart the energy. Lucid appeals to the mind, but loquacious or lilting alters the mood.
That makes a lot of sense. You deploy lucid to win the debate, but you deploy loquacious to save the room from an awkward silence.
Exactly. You're taking on the social labor.
I love that distinction. And, when you successfully adjust the emotional temperature of a room, you naturally breathe life into that environment. Which brings us to a whole collection of words in the source that denote thriving energy and raw life force.
Yes, the vocabulary of vitality.
It's a great section.
It really is.
Yeah.
We see words drawn directly from nature that rely heavily on the L sound to convey unimpeded growth. Words like lush, meaning rich and full, like thick green vegetation.
Or luxuriant.
Right, which goes a step further to mean abundant and thriving, like an overflowing garden. Then you have lavish, picturing an exuberant celebration, and leafy, conveying a fresh canopy filtering sunlight into green patterns.
Now, I know the audience definitely knows basic words from this section, like lively or liven, but there is one word here that really stopped me in my tracks.
Which one?
Lusty.
Ah, yes, lusty.
This source defines it as full of vigor, and it paints this picture of a stadium crowd's lusty cheers vibrating with raw energy.
It's a very evocative description.
It is, but in modern vernacular, lusty usually carries a very different, somewhat scandalous or purely romantic connotation. I mean, how are we supposed to use lusty in everyday conversation without raising eyebrows?
It's true. The modern usage of lusty has unfortunately been put into a very tiny restricted box.
A very specific box.
Right. But this highlights the immense value of reclaiming the broader original vitality of our vocabulary. Lusty, in this context, is about the sheer booming force of life.
Okay, so it's not inherently romantic.
Not at all. When you describe a crowd's cheers as lusty, or you talk about a lusty gust of autumn wind, you are capturing an aggressive, unfiltered vigor.
Well, it's like a stronger version of loud.
Actually, a word like loud completely misses the nuance. Loud is merely a measurement of decibels. Lusty is a measurement of spirit.
Oh, wow. Loud is decibels. Lusty is spirit. That is such a crucial distinction.
It changes the whole feeling of the sentence.
It really does. Using lusty instead of loud is almost like giving your listener 3D glasses. Loud is just the volume dial, but lusty gives them the texture, the vibration, and the actual physical weight of the sound.
Exactly. It creates a completely different psychological reaction.
And frankly, if you are moving lively, speaking lucidly, and stepping into a room with this lusty, luxuriant energy, you are going to end up in the center of the action. You're going to stand out.
Inevitably, when you utilize a vibrant vocabulary, you literally alter your own gravity.
Alter your own gravity. That's a great way to put it.
And the source reflects this by introducing words that deal with boldly taking center stage, like limelight, being the center of attention when a small project suddenly goes viral.
Or lucky, catching the right train car right as the doors close. Right. And lovely, which brings this delightfully pleasing aesthetic to the forefront, like soft colors blooming in an afternoon garden.
And then there is lightsome, which I think is my personal favorite from this entire section.
A beautiful word.
It really is. It means buoyant and easy. The text describes someone skipping down a sidewalk as if nothing could weigh them down.
Pure buoyancy.
Yeah. But right next to lightsome, the source drops the word lion-hearted, meaning bold and spirited. And the example they use is a lion-hearted firefighter rushing into a burning building without hesitation.
A very intense image.
Extremely intense. And let me challenge the source material for a second here.
Go ahead.
How does a heavy life or death epic word like lion-hearted belong on a list that is explicitly dedicated to lighthearted ludic language? I mean, skipping down a sidewalk feels miles away from running into a raging fire.
It seems like a glaring contradiction on the surface. I completely agree. But if we look closer at the sociology of how adults operate in the real world, true lightness requires a massive amount of boldness. Wait, really? Lightness requires boldness.
Absolutely. Think about what we talked about earlier, how people default to beige, corporate jargon, as a form of protective camouflage.
Right, just saying fine or synergy.
Exactly. Blending in is safe. It takes zero courage to say synergy. Therefore, to step out of that camouflage, to consciously use a word like lissom in a board meeting, or to be unapologetically lightsome in a cynical world, that requires real bravery.
Oh, I see.
You have to be a bit lion-hearted to step into the limelight and refuse to be boring. Playfulness in a rigid, beige environment is fundamentally a bold act.
Wow, I had literally never considered that playfulness requires bravery. You really do have to be willing to drop the armor and risk looking a little different.
You do. It's vulnerable.
And that exact realization, that bravery unlocks joy, brings us to the grand finale of the source text, the ludic core.
The pinnacle of the L words.
Right. All of this physical grace, this visual clarity, and this lion-hearted boldness, it all culminates in pure, unadulterated playfulness.
This is where the phonetic flow of the letter L reaches its absolute peak psychological impact. Ludic itself literally means playful or relating to games.
The source gives the example of a museum exhibit explicitly designed to make adults interact and play.
Exactly. And then we get ludibund, meaning playful or frolicsome.
And the imagery here is just phenomenal. The source describes a group of puppies in a ludibund mood, tumbling over each other in this nonstop playful chaos.
Perfectly captures that energy.
It does. And we also see larkish, which, much like loquacious earlier, is just presented as a sentence without a formal definition.
Oh, right, the sentence about the classroom.
Yeah. It says, his larkish behavior in class often made everyone laugh even when they were supposed to be paying attention. It's so interesting how the source leaves these socially disruptive words undefined, basically forcing us to infer the meaning from the reaction of the room.
It proves that the impact of the word lies in the disruption of the norm. It's about breaking the rules, but in a fun way.
Yeah, and we see that with words like loopy, which is, laughing at unfunny jokes just because you stayed up far too late.
Or loony, telling an absurd story with a grin that completely disarms the entire dinner table.
And my absolute favorite, lollygagging.
Yeah.
Spending time aimlessly in a playful or lazy way, like just taking in shop windows instead of hurrying straight home.
Just letting yourself wander.
So what does this all mean? When I look at a word like lollygagging, it feels entirely antithetical to the metrics we use to measure a successful adult life. I mean, you can't put a KPI on lollygagging.
No, you definitely can't.
It breaks the algorithm entirely. But when I picture those ludibund tumbling puppies, I realize that lollygagging is almost like an anti-metric. It is a deliberate cognitive reset button.
I love that. An anti-metric.
It is. It's granting yourself permission to just stop optimizing your existence for 5 minutes.
And this raises an important question for you, the listener, to consider right now. When was the last time you allowed your own language or your own schedule to be purely ludic?
That's a tough question for a lot of people.
It is. Because in a society that demands constant bandwidth optimization and relentless productivity, choosing to embrace a word like loopy or allowing yourself to just go lollygagging isn't just about expanding your vocabulary.
No, it's way bigger than that.
It is a rebellious act of joy.
Mm-hmm.
It signals to your brain and to the people around you that you are not a machine. You are human, and there is a requisite need for play.
A rebellious act of joy. What a brilliant lens to view this whole thing through. We've taken quite a journey through this lexical lounge today.
We really have covered a lot of ground.
We started by unpacking how the frictionless phonetic glide of the L sound mirrors the live physical economy of a cat slipping through a fence.
Moving without friction.
Right. And then we saw how it can be used as a cognitive trick to present a limpid, transparent argument in a boardroom. We explored how loquacious labor shifts the emotional temperature of a dinner party, how lusty adds actual 3D texture to a reality,
And how it takes lion-hearted bravery to break out of our beige camouflage and finally embrace that ludibund joy.
Exactly. It all connects.
Now, the takeaway here isn't to memorize all 29 words and try to force them into a single afternoon conversation. That would be chaotic.
Oh, please don't do that. You'll sound insane.
Right. The invitation is just to experiment with your linguistic gravity. Pick just one word.
Just one.
Yeah. Take lucid or lissome and deliberately deploy it in your next high-stakes email or your routine Tuesday meeting. Just pay attention to how that liquid consonant feels in your mouth and watch how it subtly disarms the room and alters the power dynamic of the interaction.
It really is a psychological superpower hiding in plain sight. But before we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over on your own.
Let's hear it.
We've just spent this entire time dissecting how the physical, frictionless motion of forming the letter L shapes the emotional resonance of the words we speak, literally calming the nervous system and making ideas feel light, lush, and lively.
It's powerful stuff.
It is.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder if just one single consonant has this much measurable psychological personality.
Yeah.
What subconscious emotional power are the other 25 letters of the alphabet secretly wielding over the way we think, feel, and judge each other every single day?
That is a fascinating thing to consider.
Something to think about the next time you open your mouth to speak. Until next time, keep exploring.